Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the fourth round of the X2O Trophy taking place in Herentals. With me to do that is Issam.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on again. I was in Herentals today for the junior races, had a nice chat with some people, got a better picture of some things going on, and will hopefully give me some more info towards the World Championships and the Zonhoven World Cup, but also just a better insight on the course. We will, however, be talking about the men's and women's races, and Issam will be giving a summary of the men's race to begin with.
Today in Herentals there was no pitcock, but we had the duo Van Aert and Van der Poel, who both started very well. They knew that they cannot miss the start here, because the ski hill, as it's called in Herentals, was at the beginning of the course, or a little bit earlier than it was in the previous years, so they both knew that it was very important for them to start very well. Jens Adams was actually probably the surprise of the day at the start. He started very well and was with the two others, with Van der Poel and Van Aert. They broke away from the rest, and that was the beginning of the race. Van der Haar and Iserbyt started well, and they had the battle for the X2O Trophy, so that was also going to be a very important one, but they were chasing together with Pim Ronhaar. Van der Poel was taking a little bit more conservative compared to his previous races. Van Aert had to take a lot of initiative, had to pace most of the time, was most of the time leading the group. Van der Poel had one test. In that test, Jens Adams was not really able to follow, almost cracked, and then he had a problem with his saddle that almost killed his chances for a podium, and then with a crash it was definitely over for him. And there was no room for him to play for the podium. So we had then the duo Van der Poel and Van Aert. Van der Poel, that didn't really bother trying to get in front, had only one attempt in the last lap. Van Aert covered it very well on the ski hill, and then it was for Van Aert to put Van der Poel under pressure in the running. So we were probably looking to a sprint, but it was not going to be like this today. It was an anticlimax. Van Aert had a puncture, rear puncture, and then Van der Poel attacked on the moment that Van Aert kind of realized that the puncture was there. No reaction from Van Aert, obviously, and Van der Poel was then the winner in Herentals in the home race of Van Aert. Van Aert in second, and then the duel behind Van der Haar and Iserbyt. They found each other, and in the last lap it was a close battle, but in the end Iserbyt was just a little bit better and got the third place.
It was such a shame that this battle didn't get the climax that we hoped for. It was in some ways a similar race to Zolder. Of course, Adams was there in the beginning of the race, when in Zolder they were with the two of them, but it was like some minor attacks, but not a full-out attack. And we said it a couple of weeks or races ago, over the past couple of weeks, we've said that most of the time it was Van der Poel who was going all out, with Van Aert being pushed into the defensive. Van der Poel was putting Van Aert under pressure, and Van der Poel today said he didn't want to do that. And I think that was a wise decision. If we look at the course here, it was a course that suited Wout van Aert. That has nothing to do with it being the home race of Wout van Aert, it's just the nature of the course. The long, steep run up, another big climb, some long straights, a bit of mud. It suits Van Aert. And it's a course where if you do too much work, you will blow up. Van Aert did try to put Van der Poel under pressure sometimes, especially on the running sections, but he didn't place a full-out attack like we have seen Van der Poel place in previous races. Van Aert doesn't need to do that either. Van Aert can trust his sprint, because he knows that most of the time he should be a little bit better in the sprint than Van der Poel. So it makes sense, and then you get a completely different scenario unfolding than we had in a race like Gavere, Diegem or Loenhout, where there's consistent pressure of one rider on the other. And today that wasn't the case. It was more of, maybe I can make a difference here in the final lap, let me test how that goes. Van Aert looked strong, and then it's a shame that he has that puncture. It was his own mistake, because when I rewatched it, I could see that as they go through the fence, every lap they were lifting their front and back wheels. Van Aert mistimed his bunny hop with the back wheel, the tiny bunny hop, and landed on this concrete part there, which was pretty sharp, and got a slow puncture from that. Unfortunate, because now we'll never know who would have gotten it today, but nevertheless, I think we can conclude again that they are super evenly matched this season.
Yeah, indeed. And I think on a course like this, there was not really a lot for Van der Poel to make the difference with Van Aert. In some of the sections, it was quite straightforward. Van Aert also ran the course the day before, so there were no surprises for him. And I think overall, like you said, the course was definitely suiting Van Aert a little bit more. And Van der Poel probably had some talks with the higher ups, and they probably told in him some sense that there was no point in trying to get away from Van Aert, and especially on a course like this, it's overkill, because you get a gap and then you have to defend that gap to somebody that actually is on a course that suits him a little bit better, and the differences are not that great. They are quite equally matched, and that was quite visible today. I think the stakes were high for both riders. They definitely wanted to win. And it's then a bit of a shame that we then could not see what would have happened if Van der Poel attacked and Van Aert didn't have the puncture. And then we might have seen a different race. Van Aert could have maybe, reacted on it, but that's not how it went. It went like this. And I think for Van der Poel, it's maybe a lesson that, it's not a bad idea to sometimes, when the course is not really a course where you can make big difference, to just wait a little and be a bit more patient. It's difficult, especially for somebody like him, who is, somebody that really loves to go at it from the start. This moment, this is the best scenario for him, or not, I wouldn't say the best scenario, but the best possible scenario. You cannot challenge this Wout van Aert, because at the moment he is equally as good. So then you cannot overkill yourself, and I think that Van der Poel did everything right this race, and Van Aert, bit unfortunate, but for him there were also not many mistakes.
Yeah, it will of course be different when we go to a course like Cockside or Zonhoven. These courses have very big features where you can try and make the difference, but if you're on a relatively simple course like Diegem, Loenhout, or today in Herentals, as you say, you can't really go hammer against Van Aert all race long. Van der Poel concluded that he went all out, and then he either gave it away by being so tired he started making mistakes, or that he would be too tired and blow up like in Diegem, and you can't have that happen all of the time. So I think, as you say, he or some people around him came to the conclusion that he really should change things up, and that's all the credit for that belongs to Wout van Aert, because it's the fact that Van Aert is at a certain level this season that Van der Poel can't race in a similar fashion as he's been doing the past 5 years in cross. He can't do that anymore, and all credit goes to Van Aert, who is just so strong. And today again, on the running section, the big long run-up, the running speed he had in some of these laps was insane, and that's why the way the last lap unfolded didn't surprise me. Van Aert wanted to lead on the run-up. He was sprinting. I was impressed that Van der Poel was able to keep up, because the pace Van Aert was taking up there was insane. I saw Van Aert close some small gaps in the early phase of the race on Van der Poel, super easy on the second ascent of the ski climb. He is definitely in a very good form. He has the ability uphill and on the pure power sections to hurt Van der Poel, and that's something that not many, maybe nobody in cross has had the past couple of years. Today Van der Poel was able to match that. I do think that at some point it wasn't as easy as it might have looked, but I don't think that they pushed each other to the limit like they did in Loenhout or Diegem, and that's also fine, because if they do that every single week, they will be absolutely burnt out by the end of the season. So that's just not possible to do that every race, and with more races per week, it's not once a week, it would be 3 or 4 times a week. So yeah, probably best that even they don't go 110% every race.
Yeah, 100%. And to be honest, even what they did right now, I'm very interesting. It's interesting from my side to see what the damage will be in the coming weeks and how they will improve their form, because obviously both of them are going on training camp during the nationals, and from there it's going to be interesting what the progression will be that they will make, and from there on we are closing in on the Worlds and the road, so it's going to be very interesting, and that's something for later. But I think then, based on what happened this year, they will probably make some adjustments next year, but that is for later. I think for now it's just amazing to see these two get at it. I thought that Van der Poel, during the race, Van der Poel was going to attack a little bit earlier and actually attack the scale himself, and maybe he intended to do that, but Van Aert definitely didn't let that happen, and went all in, and Van der Poel was able to follow quite well. So it was, like we said, a very evenly matched race, and I think we can already look forward to Cockside and the next races that are coming up with these two.
Yeah, and I thought it was a good battle, just a shame that we didn't get to see the conclusion to it. I think, as you said in the summary, Van der Poel attacked because he knew Van Aert had a puncture. He attacked so that Van Aert couldn't go into the pits, or if he had gone into the pits, he would have been knocked out immediately. I would have liked to see what happened if that puncture didn't happen, but we don't know that, and Van der Poel probably would have still attacked there. I don't think he was confident enough for another sprint. He would have wanted to open a gap through the forced section, but yeah, it is what it is, and at the end he doesn't really celebrate coming over the line, and that is great sportsmanship, but maybe he was a bit scared of those 15,000 Belgians that were there. Maybe getting mad at him? No, just joking. The fans today were great. It's a region where cross is really alive. The village next door had the Wellens brothers. Van Aert lives in Herentals. Vervekke lives in Herentals. The forest of Lichtaert is close. It's such a hotspot region. Alpecin is from the region. So the fans that came out today, I didn't see any middle fingers. I didn't hear any booing. It was just a great ambience. They were absolutely shouting for the riders. The pure cross fans came out today, and that was good to see. What was also good to see was that there was an interesting battle for the third place. Lars van der Haar took a tumble early on in the race and managed eventually to come back to Eli Iserbyt. Iserbyt is continuing a better period again. He ended third, just ahead of Van der Haar. What's your thought on the races of Iserbyt and Van der Haar, Issam?
I think Iserbyt is continuing to perform well after quite some, trouble period. And, for Van der Haar, it was a bit of a shame that he had the crash at the start of the race. It was constantly chasing, and when he got to Iserbyt, he kind of had to take some initiative, because for Iserbyt, he has the upper hand at the moment in the classification, so it's up to Van der Haar to put him under pressure, and I think that Iserbyt, played that well. And in the last lap, it was small margins helped Iserbyt to eventually win, but I think that if Van der Haar didn't have the crash at the start and was able to start a little bit closer by, and then it would have been a bit different. But that's how it goes, and I think that Iserbyt definitely deserves the third spot. Has been going quite well now, and I'd be interested to see if he can continue this line till the championships, or if there's going to be another dip with some injury that's popping up. But I don't wish him that. I hope that he can actually maintain what he has right now, because he's a good addition to the riders at the moment. And the classification is for him also important, so he has a good shot of winning it, but still some races to go.
The Belgian Championships are the second most important race of the year in Belgium, and around the Belgian Championships you will always see riders that are sick or injured just before to call in an excuse that they can take rest and train for the Belgian Championships. I'm not saying that is the case with Zweek. He could well and truly be sick. It would explain his somewhat poor performances in Diegem and Zolder, but on the other hand, it could also be that he concluded there that he didn't have the form and freshness of the preseason and something needed to change. I'm interested to see if he races Cockside, because that should be a race that suits him. But maybe he's just saying, okay, I'm doing Zonhoven and Belgian Championships. I've given up on Super Prestige. I'm not featuring in the X2O. I probably won't beat Wout and Macho. So instead, I will focus on winning the World Cup and trying to become Belgian champion. Because if you become Belgian champion, yeah, you immediately make your season a success in Belgium. Even Iserbyt, who has been flamed quite a bit over his season, disappointing, injuries, up and down. If he becomes Belgian champion, nobody will talk about that anymore. He will be, oh, yeah, Belgian champion. Okay. Well, Van Aert wasn't there, but they will still talk about it that way. So it is definitely important, and I think we could see an interesting battle, because Van Toerenhout, who actually was in a decent position in this trophy, he was in third within 2 minutes, skipped today so he could take some rest, and that is 100% a consequence of Van Aert skipping the Belgian Championships, because the initial plan was for Van Toerenhout to start here, but during the Christmas period situations changed, is the official communique from the team, which for me just points to Van Aert isn't doing the Belgian Championships. We need to stay fresh. We have Iserbyt in this trophy for us, so what are we going to do? We're going to rest, train, focus on the World Cup where Van Toerenhout still has a chance, and then the Belgian Championships. Let's look at the entire top 10 then. Van der Poel with the win ahead of Van Aert, Iserbyt and Van der Haar. Mason in 5th ahead of Honnaar, Adams, Hermans, Merlier and Soete. A couple of riders we need to talk about Issam. First of all, let's start with Jens Adams. He had a good start, and that is why we have to mention him. He looked very good for podium position until he made a silly mistake, because he crashed in a corner which really wasn't all too hard. Do you think that was a consequence of going too deep in the early part of the race?
Yeah, it added up. I think that Adams is normally not a guy that starts that fast and that really puts himself that much up front, but for some reason he thought that it was today a very good idea, and it played out quite well, I would say. And it would have even played a little bit better if, the guys behind him, the group with at that moment, Iserbyt, Van der Haar and Ronhaar, if they were looking to each other a little bit more, it would have played out even better, but that wasn't meant to be. Then he had the saddle problem. I think that kind of broke him, because he probably had to... That was quite an uncomfortable ride, and he still had to go quite a way till the pit box. So I think there he spent some energy. He was kind of cracking, and then, he felt that the guys behind him are closing in, and probably when they almost were in his wheel, took some unnecessary risks or was just a little bit too tired, and then, from there on it went a bit downhill, which is a bit of a shame, but I think from his side still a good outing, and, I would just take the positives, take the first couple of laps and try to work on that and see how far you can go next time without any issues.
Somebody else who certainly had a good race was Cameron Mason, once again steaming in the second part of the race, overtaking many riders. A 5th place for him today is a further confirmation of the great form he is having at the moment. If he can keep this up and the conditions suit him at Worlds, I think he can aim for a top 5, which would be a very, very good result. Maybe that will be tough, considering that normally Van Toerenhout and Zweek still need to be added. But I definitely think it's not off the charts if everything goes well. So that's even more encouraging for him. And you don't need me to tell that to you, because if you watch the broadcast, you know the fact that he is super good in pacing himself and always comes to the front in the second part. Usually accelerates a bit in the rest of the race. So, yeah, good stuff for him. Also good stuff for Tim Merlier, who raced his first race for Soudal Quickstep. He ended 9th, which, is a pretty good result. And I wish I could say the same for the rider ahead of him, Quinten Hermans, who's racing for Alps in the Koning now, but Hermans doesn't really seem to have the form he had before the European Championships. Then he was on our favorite list, but he disappointed there in Namur, disappeared from the race, and ever since, it's not been the Hermans that we saw at the front of the race, with the exception of Mol, where he came in extra fresh.
Wow, I mean, favorites. I think at the moment he was an underdog, but he was definitely a rider that you take in consideration for a top 5. And the last time he was in the top 5 was in the Zilvermeer Cross in Mol, which that is definitely not the position Hermans should be in. But it's very difficult to judge that situation, because obviously he wants to take the road very seriously. What is the preparation that he went through? Did he actually do some specific cross training? I don't know. It's very difficult to say how much. It sounds a bit flat, but how much he actually cares about his cyclocross results. It's definitely, you would rather have good results while not putting a lot of effort in it than what he has at the moment. So it's a bit of guessing at the moment, but I hope for him that he can find some improvements. And if that is not the case, then I hope for him that at least his road campaign will be one that will be as good as last year, and maybe even better. So we have to hope that is then going to be the case. But I think that this season in cyclocross, I don't see that there is coming much more improvement from him on that part. So yeah, for him it's just trying to improve, but I don't think that's going to be an easy task to do in the next coming weeks.
On to the women's race then. Again, not the most interesting race, as only one of the 3 best female riders of the season were there. But Pieterse, she really gave a show of her class today.
Yes, indeed. It was one corner exactly when we saw Pieterse already at the front of the pack. And then behind her, it were Alvarado and Brandt mainly that were following close by. Both have a challenge of a classification. In the X2O Trophy, at the moment in that race, was led by Denise Obetzma, but got a puncture at the start of the race. And from there, it went only downhill. Will she lose the leading position? Well, we'll know after the race. Pieterse just started from the front and was never going to give that position away. Got a gap and maintained that gap quite well. Alvarado and Brandt were together for in the beginning of the race. Brandt definitely was looking a little bit stronger than Alvarado, but Alvarado was following quite well. Brandt had some difficulties in her descent, if you can call it like that, from last year. And had the crash, which gifted Alvarado a gap, but Alvarado couldn't really maintain that in the second half of the race. Actually got in some trouble. Brandt then got herself back together, got ahead of Alvarado, and then started putting herself faster and faster in the race, actually matching Pieterse, but Pieterse was probably cruising around on the track and got the win easily. Brandt then in second, and then Alvarado had to fend off an Anamari Vorst, who was starting not great, but then in the second half of the race was actually finding the legs, and they were having to battle for the third place, and in the end Anamari Vorst got third, and Alvarado had to settle for fourth.
And the misery for Denise Obetzma already. I mean, how does this happen? She had a 5-minute lead just ahead of Poel just a couple of days ago. Everything was looking so good, and yes, we said in cross anything can happen, but if you need to puncture on one course, don't do it in Herentals after the pit zone. I mean, I looked where she punctured. It was in a corner. It looked to be like she hit a rock and immediately flat. It just seemed unlucky. I don't think there's any blame that she can take for it, but so unfortunate. I mean, she was already 2 minutes down just because of that, because she needed to do such a long part of the course on a flat tire, run the downhill because she has no grip in her back wheel. Yeah, I mean, of course her start wasn't amazing, but it wasn't terrible either. She was starting within the first 10 riders, was getting moves on relatively quickly on safe places, and then she loses 2 minutes. She's probably too eager to chase and come back. I heard that she crashed in the background, which we didn't see on broadcast, lost more time doing that, and let's be honest, if you need to do half a lap on a flat tire and run a lot, your legs will be drained as well, so that will have cost another bit, and Then again, like, it's still not the most amazing ride post-puncture, but come on, mentally something must have snapped there as well. And the misery for Betsema.
I think when we were discussing the X2O Trophy after Kortrijk, we were saying that in Flemish they would say it's in the shakosh. It's done. It's dusted. It's over. There is no need to even look at that trophy because Betsema is going to take it, and then you already have this bad feeling after Baal, and then you are looking into it, and then you think, bah. Betsema is not having the greatest of weeks at the moment. It's not great, but normally you should be able to hold on to that lead and try to get into a period where you're a little bit better. And we knew that Herentals was going to be a very important race because with Cockside coming up, that this is a race that suits her a little bit more. And then from there on, you can try to find the better legs and see what you can do. But we knew that these 3 races were going to be important with Baal and then in Herentals and then Cockside. And I think that we can conclude now that after Herentals, in my opinion, there is no shot Betsema is going to win this trophy. It's done. I don't think that both women that are at the moment in the lead are going to have that much of an issue. But, if you miss a race, if something happens with a mechanical, then there is always something that can throw something in the fight. But Betsema, in my opinion, the classification, which was a 100% win, is thrown away. And now you have to look and see what you can improve and try to motivate yourself for the next race.
And Betsema is still to win one of the big trophies, World Cup, Super Prestige, or X2O Trophy, and it's thrown away in the sense that it might be in the bin. I mean, she's not completely out of it. She's 26 seconds down, and of course things aren't looking good with her current form level, considering Brandt is seemingly improving every race. But then again, the next race is Cockside, then there's a bit of a break. Betsema will go on a training camp in Spain, so it could help her that she can use that training camp to find a bit better form and then really go well again. We know that Betsema is a rider who does well post-World Championships when tiredness is kicking in. We still have Lille and Brussels. If she can limit the damage in Cockside to 15 seconds on Brandt and then do alright in Hamme, I still see a path forward for her. But as you say, it's not looking good because today, whilst Betsema was suffering in the background, which in a way is not surprising. You need to overtake riders, the pressure is there, you're probably thinking, shit, I'm screwing up the X2O Trophy, how does this happen to me, why do I have a puncture at this race, at this moment? And that downhill has never been the best friend of Betsema. I've seen her go down in 2020, and I don't really recall last year all too much, but in the first edition there, she did already look a bit sketchy there. So it's no surprise that then she makes a mistake there, but it's still not out of the window, despite especially Brandt looking pretty good today, because Alvarado is still behind Betsema in the overall, and Alvarado didn't look too good today, exploding in the second part of the race.
Yeah, that's true. And maybe it's a bit too early for me to say that that's all over, but Cockside is going to be an important race for her. That's a race that normally should be something she's good at with the sand. So she can prove us wrong there, I would say, but the form that she had today was not great. And if you go with that form, even if you go into a race that suits you well, if you do not have the legs, the gap will be there. So we'll see, and hopefully she can turn it around. I really hope that she actually can do it and actually win the classification, because I think she deserves the classification, but it's going to be very hard and it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, but today we can't only put it down to form. I do believe that she is in a bit of a form crisis, that it's the weakest she's been all season, but there were many factors that I mentioned before that 100% influenced her performance in, one, recovering from that unfortunate puncture, and then two, keeping your head down without getting too stressed. And it is annoying when things like this happen, and it is exactly the reason why pit loops should be better balanced than they are here in Herentals. But that's a different discussion. I think it's very unfortunate, but again, if we're talking about riders who didn't make a good impression, Alvarado was looking pretty good in the first part of the race, and then in the second part she just faded. Like, she was with Brandt, and then she was even ahead of Brandt, and then Brandt caught up, she got dropped by Brandt, and fell all the way back to Worst. And that was weird to see, because in Baal it was exactly the other way around. Many mistakes in the first part of the race, and then a relatively good second part of the race. I would say that for Alvarado, tiredness is kicking in now, and that the consistency is lacking a bit in the races as a consequence of that.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a fair point, because there is definitely now with the double Super Prestige and then Baan and Herentals, I think tiredness is kicking in. So it will be tough if the tiredness is kicking right now for the next races that are coming up. It's definitely going to be difficult. So I think that for her it's a case of trying to get as much rest as you can in one day, and then try to fire it up again another time and see how you can get through that race. Maybe pace yourself a little bit better. Try to be a bit more conservative at the start, and then finish a bit more strong. But it's like you said, today was definitely, I thought that third place was going to be it, and then Vorst closed in more and more. Alvarado started to slow down a little, and then you kind of had that feeling that Vorst was going to make it, and then it happened. So yeah, it was definitely not only the race of the great performances, but somebody that was performing quite well was Pieterse.
Yeah, because in all of this we haven't even mentioned her yet. It was again a stunning display of class by her. She was definitely feeling confident in the technical downhill of the ski hill, but for the rest the power was there, the complete package was there, and it's really no surprise that she wins here, and she isn't on purpose dodging Van Empel and Van Anrooy, but it is unfortunate that they don't race against each other, because just like in Baal at the end of lap 1, we basically knew, okay, this rider is going to win. And that's also the reason that I don't have all too much to say about her. But again, just like in Baal, the same goes for Brandt. Brandt was yo-yoing a bit in the first lap for that second place, and then once she was in second, it definitely looked good. She was surprised that she was leading the trophy after the race, but it gives her something to get the going for again, because she's of course knocked out in the Super Prestige and World Cup standings due to that injury, but she has something to play for again, the X2O Trophy, and that's looking good. And I guess we can say the same for Anamari Worst, who's been going up and down with a knee injury herself as well.
Terrible injury as well, because it's an injury that at the moment is still lasting. She has to look at it from day by day, and sometimes it kicks in the race. So I think there is still she still has to go for an operation in the hospital of Herentals, actually, where she will I think that will be after the season, where she will go for an operation for the knee. And see how that will go. But it's difficult, and I think it's definitely from her side definitely a bonus to be racing well and getting the reward of a podium, because difficult times, especially with such an injury.
Let's look at the entire top 10 then. Pieterse with the win ahead of Brandt, Worst and Alvarado. Sanne Cant came back from a long rest period and ended 5th. Van Alphen ended 6th ahead of Vash. Again, a race that involved running. No good result for Vash, but this was definitely still below par, even with one long running section. Rochette in 8th, ahead of Benveld in 9th, and Betsema in 10th. I think to round off this podcast, we should talk about Sanne Cant. She's back from a longer rest period, as said. She took rest, and her reasoning was that she did a big road season, and that she rushed herself into cyclocross, that she didn't take enough time to do cross-specific training, and that she was happy with how things went today because she felt improvement. I think we have to say that a 5th place is a decent result, but immediately note that with such a long rest period and not doing any of the races this Christmas period, she had a huge freshness advantage over the riders who've done multiple races here. I still think that this 5th place is an improvement to where she's been earlier in this season, because it's been so up and down. I mean, a 12th place in Merckxplas and then a 5th place here in Herentals is a world of a difference for Cant, for any rider who can turn that around in such a way.
Yeah, definitely. I think that note is definitely something that needs to have an exclamation mark, because, for in this period in particular, as we have seen with Alvarado, that is struggling with those races so close to each other. It's close to cheating. It's not cheating, but it's close to. She definitely needed it. She definitely needed the rest, and like you said, I think that her level at the moment now is better than it was before the rest period a month ago. But yeah, it is a result where you have to take some things into consideration. But I think for her, which is probably the most important thing, is that she is having a good form just before the championships. And I think that if she would have been continuing and not take that rest period that she now took, it was not going to be. She was not going to be in a great form, I think, and then we might have suggested things like maybe should have taken some rest. So I think in the end she played it well. The form is not terrible. It's actually quite good. The result today was also quite good. So I think that for her it's trying to maintain it, trying to make sure that you're not overdoing it, because obviously you feel now that you are on a good level. So then the danger is obviously to do a little bit too much. And then just focus on the Belgian Championships and, try to get a 14th in a row, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, indeed. 14 Belgian titles is her goal. That's where all eyes will be going. I still think that depending on the conditions, Ribeirol or maybe Verdonschot can oppose a threat to her. But, well, we will know in under 2 weeks, just 2 weeks until the national championships. Christmas period is racing past. 7 out of the 10 races done. 3 to go. Issam, thank you for being here to discuss the racing in Herentals.
Yes, definitely. Next up, Cockside.
Cockside, going to be a good race. Looking forward to that. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will be back after the X2O Trophy in Cockside. Goodbye.